You have a story to tell. I believe that. Do you believe it? In fact, about 4 out of 5 people believe they have a story to tell. They believe they have a book in them to write. Unfortunately, a very small percentage of them actually start writing that book. Now, I imagine if you're watching this video, you believe you have a story to tell. You believe you have a book to write. Will you begin it? I want to start off by saying I don't believe that we all have a calling for our life. Okay. I used to believe that when I was young. I grew up in a Christian home. I was learning the Bible from an early age. And for whatever reason, I just believed that I had a big calling on my life. For the span of my life, God was calling me to do something. I didn't know what it was at the time when I was young. I believed that God gave me a calling to go into youth ministry while I was in university studying graphic design. And so I came home and went into youth ministry. I was a youth pastor for 5 years, volunteer youth pastor. And it was at the end of those 5 years that I felt like I received another calling to go into full time missions. And I felt like God was telling me He had something bigger for me. Turns out when I went into full time missions, just a few weeks in, I met my wife. And I believe that was the bigger thing that God was calling me to. He was calling me to family, He was calling me to my wife, and eventually to our children. And then the calling changed again. Our second child, Esther, was born with hearing loss. She's completely deaf and she has cochlear implants to help her hear. And so at that point, I felt like God called me to write a book that brought awareness to hearing loss and hearing devices and sign language. And so that's why I wrote Ada and the Helpers. My point is, I believe we have a calling as Christians, but I don't believe it has to be a full lifelong calling. I believe God gives us a calling for every season and every area of our life. So, what season are you in right now? And what story can you tell from that season? Or what story can you tell from the season you're coming out of, a season from a previous part of your life? I believe you have a story to tell. You believe you have a story to tell. What is that story? And how can you write a book about it? I was reading in Hebrews 12, um, and it really hit me. So I wanted to share that with you. Hebrews 12, verses 1 and 2, and I'm reading from the English Standard Version. It says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses." Now, if you're not too familiar with the Bible or the book of Hebrews, the chapter before this, chapter 11, is called the chapter of faith, or it talks about the heroes of faith throughout the Bible up until this point, really throughout the Old Testament of the Bible. So it talks about Abel, and it talks about Abraham, and it talks about Moses and David, and I don't remember all the different people throughout the Old Testament that it talks about, but it mentions many who were sort of the heroes of faith. And so they are represented by this phrase, the great cloud of witnesses here. So, therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith. I want to stop there for you. Jesus is the founder and perfecter of our faith. Now, that word founder, this is what I really found interesting. Some of the translations, instead of founder, it has the word author. Jesus is the author of our faith. And then it says founder and perfecter. Jesus is the perfecter of our faith. He's perfecting us in our faith. And I really think that that word perfecter could also be translated as editor. If we are looking in the scope of self-publishing or publishing in general, The editor is the one who sort of perfects your story. Jesus is in the business of perfecting your story, perfecting your faith. Not only is he the author of our faith, he's the perfecter of our faith, or the editor of our faith. Isn't that amazing? And as I was reading this, I began to think, Jesus is both author and editor of our faith. You could almost say he's the ultimate self-publisher. He's the ultimate publisher of our faith. And so, if you don't know, I'm getting ready to release a book called The Indie Author's Dozen, which walks you through the whole self-publishing team that you should have in place to write and publish your own children's book or any book of any genre. And one of the members of that team, I believe, especially if you're a Christian, is the creator. He created you. He created everything in this world out of nothing. And while we can't create something out of nothing, I believe that God calls us to recreate. And even more than just recreate, he calls you to co-create with him. What a beautiful calling that is. So are you willing, are you ready to accept that calling? Are you ready to co-create with God, the author and perfecter of your faith? If I go back to verse 1 here, it says, let us lay aside every weight. What may be holding you back from writing your book is fear. Maybe you're fearful of sharing your story. Maybe you're fearful that no one will like it and that you will be a failure as an author. Let me tell you, if you co-create with God, if you develop your team, your dozen, as I like to call it, you're on the best path forward to being a successful author and bringing glory to God as an author and through your book. Now, again, I'm about to release this book, The Indie Author's Dozen. If you would like to grab the introduction chapter to this book, you can do so at launchmissioncreative.com/dozen. If you're a Christian author, or if you're thinking about writing a book, I would encourage you to subscribe to this channel, like this video, because I love to share content for you to help you produce books, create books that not only children will love, but adults will cherish. And I love working with authors who have the biblical worldview that they want to implement in their stories. I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you in the next one.